רבותיי. שבוע טוב רבותיי, קהל קדוש, ברשות הרבנים החשובים, משפחת וקנין, השם עליהם יחיו. I came tonight to say דברי תורה לעילוי נשמת המנוח מיכאל בן אסתר. רוח אדוני תניחנו בגן עדן, ותהי נשמתו צרורה בסוף החיים, אמן. It's not easy for me to give the Rashot on Motzei Shabbat. Although Shabbat is a day of Menucha, but that's my busiest day of the week in working in the congregation in Brooklyn. From early in the morning until 8:30, we're saying constant Rashot. But I made an extra effort out of respect to my good friend Rabbi Asher, that told me tonight is a special night for the yortzeit of his father. So I thought it would be a good opportunity to push myself in order to address Kahal Kadosh. If you'll allow me to say a Hiddush tonight that I haven't said yet. It's not on the CDs, it's not on the Learn Torah. It's a Hiddush in honor of the Manoah. The Gemara in Masechet Shabbat on Daf Pechet. It's quoting the pasuk when the Jewish people went to receive the Torah. Vayityatzvu betachtit ahar. Simply it means they stood at the foot of the mountain. But the Gemara says, Melamed Shekafa alehem har kigiyit, that they literally were under the mountain. Betahtit doesn't mean at the foot, betahtit means underneath. That means that Kadosh Baruch Hu took the mountain and he held it over their heads and he warned them. Im tekablu et Torah mutav. If you're willing to accept this Torah, mutar, it's good. Ve'in lav, and if you don't accept it, sham teheh kivulatchem. Over there will be your burial. The Borei Olam threatened Am Yisrael that he'll take the mountain and cover them, and smash them, and destroy them. Ve'ityasevu betachtit ahar. The mountain was hovering over their heads, and if Am Yisrael wouldn't have accepted the Torah, the mountain would have came down. Asks the Tosafot a very strong question. Tosafot says, the Jews were forced. The Jews accepted the Torah by force with the threat of Har Kigiyit. Didn't the Jewish people say, Na'aseh v'nishma? When God came to them, they said, where do we sign? Na'aseh v'nishma. They accepted it blindly. We don't even have to see what's written. They accepted the Torah b'ratzon. What does it mean? Kafah aleim har kegigit. This is the question of Tosafot. Tosafot gives an answer. To be honest, I never understood the answer of the Tosafot. But this is what he says. He says, oh, Kadosh Baruch Hu was worried. Sheyir'u, they're going to see et ha'esh ha'gedolah. There was a great fire that came down at the time of Matan Torah. And Kadosh Baruch Hu said that when they see the great fire, they might get scared, they might get worried. And as a result, they're not going to want to accept the Torah. So we had to be kofeh alehem har kigigi mishum ha'esh ha'gedolah, the great fire. This is Tosfot. Can I ask you a question? What is this Esh Gedolah? Is this Esh Gedolah a positive fire or a negative fire? It's a positive. It's Esh Torah. The Midrash says there's two types of fire. There's Esh Ma'ariv and Esh Boneh. Certain fires are destructive, but other fires are constructive. They're positive. The Gemara in Hagigah says, when the rabbi sat down to study Ma'aseh Merkavah, a fire came down from heaven. This fire was the fire of the Merkavah. It's a positive, it's a blessing, this fire. What does it mean? Tosfot says God was worried when they see Esha Gedolah, they're going to get scared and they're going to say, no, we don't want the Torah. On the contrary, Tosfot and Hagigah brings a story. There was a rabbi called Avuya. Avuya had a baby boy. It was the day of the Brit. All the Hachamim came because Avuya was one of the Hashuvim of Yerushalayim. All the rabbis came to the Brit. When they got to the Brit, there was a delay. So the rabbi said to Avuya, we're going to go in the library and study. When the Moed comes, you call us. So they started to study Torah, from Torah to Nevi'im, to Ketuvim. They went from one book to another book. And all of a sudden, this is the fire of Har Sinai came down in the library of Avuya. So Avuya goes into the library, sees the fire. He says to the Hachamim, you came to burn down my house? He says, Hasu Shalom, look, nothing's burning. This is the fire of Torah. He got so impressed. Avuya says, this is the fire that comes from Torah? He said, yes, you learn Torah, the Shem Shamayim, the fire comes down. He said, I never saw such a thing like this. Esh Boneh. He said, Yehi Ratzon, I wish my son will study Torah and will become a great rabbi and will be meriting and will be zocher to this fire. Why am I telling you this story? To show you that the Esh of Torah is inspiring. The Esh of Torah is motivating. Here, Avuya saw the fire, he said, I want my son to be like this. What does Tosfot say? Oh, they were worried about Esh HaGedolah. Esh HaGedolah. Adrabah. If they saw the Esh HaGedolah of Torah, they should have said, we want it double Ma'aseh B'Nishma. Not only that, but if you read the words of Tosfot properly, anytime you see the word Gadol or Gedolah, that word is used to represent Hesed. Anytime you see the word Gibor, Gibor is Geburah, that's Midat Adin. We say in the Amidah, Ha'el, Ha'gadol, Ha'gibor, Ha'norah. If you look at some of the Sidurim, on top of Ha'gadol, it says Abraham. Ha'gibor, Yitzhak. Ha'norah, Yaakov. Yaakov is Norah because he said, Man Norah Ha'makom Hazeh. Yitzhak is Geburah, Midat Adin. And who's Gadol? Hesed, Abraham. So Tosfot says it himself, Ha'esh HaGedolah. It's the Esh of Hesed. So I'm asking, if the Jewish people saw Esh HaGedolah, Esh HaTorah, that should make them afraid not to want to receive the Torah. Adrabah, the Esh HaGedolah should only motivate them. It's a reason for them to accept it. B'shut Kahal Kadosh, I'd like to say a big Hadush. To me, it's a chidush that's very practical. It applies to me, and I'm sure it applies to many of you as well. It's a chidush that I say from experience. There was a great rabbi called Rabbi Tam. Rabbi Tam from the Tosafot. Rabbi Tam wrote a sefer called Sefer HaYashar. In Sefer HaYashar, he talks about two stages in life that everybody goes through. He says sometimes a person is going through Yemei HaOr, the days of light, and at other times a person goes through what he calls Yemei HaOshech, the days of darkness. And at any given point in your life, you're either in Yemei HaOr or Yemei HaOshech. What does it mean? What does it mean, Rabbi Tam? You know what I understand Yemei HaOr means? That's when you're on the up. You're excited. You're in a good mood. Everything in life is working. The business, Baruch Hashem, is working. Your family life is good. You have Shalom Bayit. Everything's good with the kids in the yeshiva. Yemei HaOr. You're going through an optimistic time of life. You have a certain positive energy. You're charged. All of us experience Yemei HaOr. You get up in the morning, you can't wait to come to the shiur. You can't wait to pray to HaKadosh Baruch Hu with kavanah. You're excited to do Gemilut Chasadim. You're excited to give tzedakah. You feel yourself being mitkarev. You're getting closer and closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're on the up. Many people feel Yemei HaOr during Elul. Some people, Rosh Hashanah, Aseret Teshuvah, Kippur, Sukkot, the Yamim Noraim, the motivating days. But it doesn't have to be that way. It could be any time of year. All of a sudden, a person just gets a gift. It's a gift from God. Yemei HaOr. He feels close to the Shekhinah. He feels attached to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. During Yemei HaOr, it's very easy to serve God. It's flowing. It's natural. It's easy. It's almost as if you're being carried. But the better times, be careful. Because Yemei HaOr doesn't last forever, even if you're the biggest tzaddik. Because eventually, but it's going to happen, comes Yemei HaOshech, where life becomes a little difficult, where God throws a challenge to the person, whether it's in his parnasah, whether it's in his health, whether it's in his family, whatever it may be. And now, all of a sudden, he loses his drive. He loses his heshek. He loses the desire. He's not excited to get up to go to Beit Knesset. Now it's a drudge. You have to push him. He's not excited. He's angry. All of a sudden he becomes a little bitter. He's down. And worse, the worst avirah that the Hakamim say that a person could commit, he allows himself to fall into a depression. I'm not talking about clinical depression. Clinical depression, a person needs to go to a doctor. I'm talking about the regular ups and downs of life where a person wakes up and he says, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. I'm in a bad mood. He's down for whatever reason. Achamim warn us. There's no greater avirah than the avirah ba'atzmut. Because when a person lets himself get down and he gives up his religion and he says, I don't want to pray today, and I don't want to serve God, and I don't want to read my Tehillim, and I don't want to do mitzvot, and he forfeits at that moment, Achamim warn us that it'll start to fall and fall and fall. And before he knows it, he finds himself in a very low place. I don't know if you remember, but in the olden days, today you don't see it that often. In the olden days there was missionaries. The missionaries would go from door to door, trying to persuade you to join another religion. But there was one place where you always would see the missionaries giving out Bibles and pamphlets and books. And that was in the lounges in the airports. You don't see them anymore today. Today there's so much security, Baruch Hashem, they don't let them in. But in the olden days when it was a little more loose, they always hang out in the airports. Why? So I always thought, because they have a captive audience, you can't go anywhere, you're stuck. The person sitting in the lounge waiting to get on a plane, he can't go anywhere. So that in the house, you can close the door. What are you going to tell the guy? He sits next to you, he talks. But one rabbi said a deeper reason. He said because a lot of people in the airports, the reason why they're traveling causes them to be a little down. And they might have depression. Somebody's going on a business trip, he's nervous, he doesn't know if he's going to make the sale or not. He doesn't know if he's going to make the parnasah, so his mind isn't miyushab, he's not settled. Somebody else is going to fly because his mother's sick, he has to go visit. Another one's going to fly to a funeral. A lot of people in the airport are unsettled. And the missionaries know that when a person's mind is not miyushab, you can even convince them to worship Avodah Zarah. They know that a lot of people in the lounges of the airport are vulnerable because they're down. They're not in the proper mood. Therefore, atzvut is the worst amirah. Rav Chaim Shmulevitz said on the pasuk, when the Jewish people worship the golden calf, the pasuk says, "Saru maher min haderech." What does it mean, Saru Maher? It should say, Saru Min HaDerech. They went off the derech. What does it mean, Saru Maher Min HaDerech? Chaim Shmulevitz said, how did the Jewish people that came out of Egypt end up worshipping a golden calf? How did they come to such a level to take the earrings and come along and say, Ele Elohecha Yisrael? How is it possible? It's very simple. Moshe they thought was dead. They just killed Hur. They must have felt bad about that. The Midrash says they killed the 70 Zekelim. So they started to feel down upon themselves. No more Moshe. We killed the leaders, they made Averot, and they started to become depressed. And he says, once you become depressed, you could do the unimaginable. It makes no sense. You're right, because you're thinking rationally. He says, Saru Maher. Maher is the main word. What normally takes 100 years, in depression it takes 1 minute. And therefore, atzvut, melancholy, sadness, is the biggest of the averot because it leads to the worst of the averot. But the biggest danger is that when people are not in the proper mood, they let go of their religion. You see, Rabbi, our service to God, says the Ben Utam, must be not only in Yemei HaOr, but also in Yemei HaChoshech. Not always are you going to have Heshek. Not always are you going to be in the mood to go to class. Today we live in a very spoiled generation. Today we only want to serve God on our terms. It has to be the right degrees. We have to have first a continental breakfast. We have to have everything proper. It has to be valet parking. Everything has to be proper. And if it's not 100% to our luxury, we cannot do it, too difficult. That's how you serve God, only when it's an easy road, only when it's a yellow brick road. Beru Tam says you must serve God even during Yemei HaChoshech, and it's more important than Yemei HaChoshech. Even when it's difficult, what, you don't think sometimes even as a rabbi, when I had to give derashot, it was difficult for me to give derash. A few months ago I had some issues with my eyes. I was in Yemei HaChoshech. Physically, literally, you don't think it gets a person down? How am I supposed to come give derash and motivate people, and I'm struggling to see the words? This Yemei HaChoshech, you think I jumped out of my said, come derash, excited, beg on the tevah, kahal kadosh. I had to be pulled out of my bed. And I would tell my wife, I want you to know, these derashot that I'm giving over the past few months are the most difficult for me. From the pulpit, it doesn't look difficult. From the pulpit, it looks easy. But in my head, in my brain, it's fighting through Yemei HaChoshech. Everybody goes through this. Whether you're a teacher, whether you're a rab, whether you're a student, whether you're a mother, whether you're a father, whether you're a teenager, everybody's going to go through ups and downs. What would have been my option? To go lie down in bed and cover my head with the covers? What would that have done? It only would have made things worse. Now I would have fell into a worse of a depression. Now I would have been in a worse place. And therefore the trick is to hold on to the Borei Olam even when it's difficult. And we have a tradition. Always after Yemei HaChoshech, it passes. Vahi Erev, Vahi Boker. Even if you go to the North Pole and it's dark for 6 months, somebody says it's never going to be light again. Eventually the light will come even on the North Pole. It passes. A lady that's having a labor pain, she doesn't think the pain will ever subside. And the doctor says, just breathe through it, it's going to pass. And all of a sudden, it subsides. And eventually it subsides completely. But if you didn't hold on during Yemei HaChoshech, by the time Yemei HaOr comes, you have nothing. You let go. A young rabbi in our community once saw me. I was coming out of the kollel. He wasn't a rabbi yet, he was working in business. He came off the bus from the city, and he was coming into the Beit Knesset. We happened to bump into each other. I was coming out of the kollel, he was walking to pray mincha. He said, Rabbi Ilan, how do you sit in the kollel all day long? He told me this story many years later. I forgot it. He told me the story. He says, this conversation, it only lasted for 9 seconds, the whole exchange. He said, but it changed his life. He said, when I asked you, how do you sit in the kollel all day long and learn Torah? He says, you looked at me and you made like an odd face. Like, what kind of question is that? And you pointed to the kollel and you said, you see this building over here? This is a candy store. And you walked away. He says, and I was frozen. It's because I really believed that you believed that that was a candy store. You said it with such confidence, and you said it with such conviction, and you weren't trying to mekarev me and trying to sell me. You said it was a candy store, and you walked away. I said, this guy really thinks this is a candy store. And the truth of the matter is, I have to be honest. Most of the days when I go studying the kollel, it's a candy store. They're giving out jelly beans and marshmallows and root beer floats and all the delicious things. I have to be honest with you. I don't like it. That's the way I feel. But I wouldn't be honest if I were to tell you that some days when I go to the kollel, it's not a candy store. It's a burden, and it's difficult, and I'm not in the mood, and I don't want to open the book, and it's a battle, and it's a struggle. You see, I'm being honest with you. Some Rabbanim will always get up and say, no, it's always great, and Simcha, and you're going to love it, and beautiful. And then you say, but it's not always like that. And I'm coming to tell you, you're right. Lucky that when I met that boy, that day was a candy store. But if he would have met me maybe a week later, and I would have told him, oh, this is a factory. Factory, I don't want to go. I work in a factory already, I don't need to go to another factory. But even if it's a factory, you have to work through it. You never let go of it. By the way, there's always a pasuk that always they quote, "Im bechokotai telechu." You have to follow the laws. And what does Rashi say, bechokotai telechu? Shetiyu amelim b'Torah. You have to toil with the Torah. What does it mean, toil? When you're doing something that you love and something that's sweet, you don't have to toil to eat strawberry shortcake. You don't have to toil to play sports. You don't have to toil to watch a Broadway show. What do you mean toil? Toil sounds like it's difficult. Toil sounds like it's a work. You know what the explanation is? The pasuk is telling you, of course, when it's sweet, vadai. But even when the Torah is in amelut, even when it's hard for you, even when you have bills in your pocket that you didn't pay, and even when you have pressure at home, and even though when you have tzarot in the business, and now you say, you know what, I'm not coming to learn tonight, I can't, I'd rather have. No. Shetiyu amelim b'Torah. Because if you let go at that point, when it passes, you're already going to be in a very low place. And now it's going to be very hard to make up that ground. Torah sivalanu Moshe, Morasha Kehilat Yaakov. The pasuk tells us that our Torah is a Yerusha. You know what a Yerusha is? Yerusha is an inheritance. In another place, the Torah is called Matana. Yismach Moshe b'matanat chelko. You know what a Matana is? Matana is a gift. Make up your mind. Is Torah an inheritance or is Torah a gift? I'd like to say a chidush tonight. It's both. You see, a gift, I can only give a person a gift if he wants to accept it. I can't force a person to take a gift. I can offer a person a gift, and if he says, I don't want it, I cannot force a gift against the person's will. A gift is something that you accept miratzon. However, Yerusha, whether you like it or not, if you're the inheritor, it's yours. A son cannot say, I don't want to be Yoresh. Ben Yoresh Av, finish. It comes down to you, whether you like it or not. Sometimes the Torah is a matana. You want it miratzon. You're excited to take it. You're enthused. But other times the Torah is a Yerusha. You have to take it against your will. You have no choice. Forgive me for being realistic. I'm sorry if I don't paint a picture of utopia that some people do, but it's not a realistic picture because life isn't utopia. Life is battles every single day, and not always when the alarm clock gets up, rings at 6 a.m., you jump up, and you're all excited. And some days, you wake up 2 hours before the alarm. and you're excited 2 hours before the alarm, already you're up. And you're reading Tehillim and Tikkun Atzot, and you go to mikveh. There's days like that. And there's other days, the snooze, Hayadayim Yedei Isad, the snooze. That's Yemei HaChoshech. And everybody goes through it. And the Yetzer Hara during Yemei HaChoshech says, you see, you're an Ahbab, you're a Shah, you're good for nothing, look at you. Everybody's better than you, and he tries to lower you, to bring you down. And you have to catch yourself. You say, no, Rabbeinu Tam talked about this. If Rabbeinu Tam talked about Yemei HaChoshech, it's an old problem. We have to ride it, we have to go through it. It's not comfortable, it's not pleasurable, it'll pass. Everybody broke it. Sometimes you have to be Amel B'Torah. Rabotai, I'd like to explain the Gemara now. When the Jewish people came to Har Sinai, they were on the highest level ever. The Gemara says they reached the level of Adam HaRishon Kodem Achet. They were on the high. They were able to hear Anochi Hashem Elokecha and Lo Yeh Lecha Elokim Achirim from God Himself. At that moment, the Gemara says, Haska Zohamatam. The Zohama, the Tum'ah of the Nahash Kadmon, they were relieved from it. David HaMelech said on that generation, Ani Amarti Elohim Atem. Ubnei Alyon Kodechem. You know what type of spiritual euphoria the Jewish people were? It was an ecstasy. At that moment, they were on the highest madrigot. And therefore, it was very easy for them to say, Na'aseh Nishma. And when they saw what Tosfot says, the Esh HaGedolah, that Esh represented the Esh of motivation, the Esh of inspiration, the Esh of excitement and enthusiasm, the fire of Torah, they saw it. But you know what happened when they saw Esh Gedolah? They got scared. Because they knew that Esh Gedolah is temporary. And they said we can accept the Torah when we feel like this. But what's going to happen when the Esh subsides? What's going to happen when this feeling, when it dissipates? That's what they were worried. They said, yes, we can keep Torah under these conditions. When there's Esh Gedolah in front of us, that's a motivator. But is it realistic that always there's going to be Esh Gedolah in front of us? So they got scared. They were scared from Yemei HaChoshech. So God said, God took the mountain and put it over their heads and said, Rabotai, sometimes you have to follow the Torah against you. Sometimes you have to follow the Torah when it's kafa alehem har kigigit. Sometimes you have to follow the Torah because you're forced, you have no choice. Even when the Esh is not there, Borei Olam was telling them, you're going to have to follow it under all conditions. And we feel the same way. Sometimes we follow the Torah in Esh HaGedolah, and other times we follow it, we feel it's kafa alehem har kigigit. It all depends what moment in life. I'm sure if we took a survey in this room, half the room would say, I'm going through Yemei HaOr, and half the room would say they're going through Yemei HaChoshech. And at all times, it constantly changes. And at Har Sinai, we accepted to serve God under both conditions. Sometimes you have to serve God when you don't feel good, and you're hungry, and you're cold, and you have a stomachache, and you don't have the front row seat, and you have to sit on the side, and you can't see good. That's your Moshe. God Kadosh. Somebody asked me a question, and I'd like to answer the question. A boy in the Bet Knesset last week became Bar Mitzvah. He said, Rabbi, I'm putting on tefillin now for the first time. What is written in the tefillin shel yad? I said, 4 parashiyot. He says, what's written in tefillin shel rosh? I said, the same 4 parashiyot. So he asked, why do you need both? Why do you need redundancy? Why do we need to do the same mitzvah twice? We never have a mitzvah that we do twice. I thought he told me there's something in the tefillin shel different than the tefillin shel rosh. That it's hadush. We tell me it's the exact same parashiyot? Exactly. So what do you need 2 mitzvot for? It's a good question. Based on tonight's shiur, this is the answer I gave. And did you ever think for a second? The mitzvah of tefillin, which is the first mitzvah really that the bar mitzvah boy involves himself. That's his entry into the mitzvah.